Hello and welcome to VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Bunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us today. On this episode of Red Carpet, we have a Colorado collage artist celebrating African American culture, Queen Elizabeth's influence in fashion and pop culture, and a former NFL player is using music to advocate for autism. Let's get on with the show. And let's start the show with some highlights of the latest entertainment news from around the world. And in some art news, President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden welcomed former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama to the White House to unveil the Obama's official portraits. The White House has portraits beginning with that of our first president, George Washington. Since 1965, the portraits have been funded by the White House Historical Association. At the ceremony, President Joe Biden called former President Obama one of the most consequential presidents in the nation's history. And in some sports news, tennis sensation Frances Tiafoe's thrilling run at the US Open ended after his loss in the semifinals to Carlos Alcaraz at the Arthur Ashe Stadium. 24-year-old Sierra Leonean American Tiafoe was discovered as a child at the USTA Junior Tennis Champions Center in College Park in Maryland, where his father worked as a janitor. And this year, he made history as the first American man to reach the US Open semifinals since 2006. He achieved that feat after eliminating 22-time Grand Slam champion Rafael Nadal. Now, even though Tiafoe didn't win the US Open's championship, he continues to be an inspiration to thousands of young black tennis players from around the world, including those young tennis players in Freetown, Sierra Leone. And in some music news, Ghanaian Best Afrochella Festival announced its lineup for 2022 with Nigerian superstar Burna Boy and Ghanaian Stone Boy as headliners of the event. Afrochella is a yearly celebration of African culture that showcases music, art, fashion, and food by African creators. The theme for this year's event is Afrofuturism. And now to some fashion news. Britain's Queen Elizabeth died at the age of 96 at her residence in Scotland. She ascended to the throne in 1952, making her Britain's longest-serving monarch. But Elizabeth was more than just a head of a powerful monarch and one of the world's most respected heads of state. She was also a pop cultural icon whose 70 years in power put her at the center of an evolving world and the communication technologies like television and film that came to define our cultural landscape. Here is more. The Queen always made a fashion statement at both private and public events. She had a taste for bright colors and stood out in a crowd. Dating back to the 1950s frocks, decades later in the 80s with her frilly ensembles and colorful wool coats. Legendary American visual artist Andy Warhol paid homage to the British monarch with his Reigning Queen's screen print series created in 1985, the most valuable print being the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. To music, celebrated in song by famous bands like the Beatles. In fact, Sir Paul McCartney reportedly admitted that he had a bit of a crush on the Queen when they were both younger. He wrote a short song about her in which he lovingly opines about the Queen, saying that, quote, "Someday I'm going to make her mine." McCartney later performed the short song in 2002 at Buckingham Palace Gardens for the Queen's Golden Jubilee concert. To film several on-screen portrayals of the monarch, many of the UK's top performers have taken a turn playing Queen Elizabeth on both the big and small screen. Helen Mirren won the Best Actress Oscar for her portrayal of Queen Elizabeth in The Queen. Mirren also shared her thoughts on Instagram, saying, quote, "I'm proud to be an Elizabethan. We mourn a woman who, with or without the crown, was the epitome of nobility." Claire Foy was young Elizabeth and Princess Elizabeth in Netflix's The Crown, a historical drama series about the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. The Emmy Award-winning series is one of the most watched on the streaming platform. Following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the show's writer and creator Peter Morgan said that the series, which is a love letter to her, would stop filming in her honor. Other actresses that portrayed the Queen include Olivia Colman, and Helena Bonham Carter. Persuasion, a new film based on Jane Austen's early 19th century novel, has ranked among the top 10 on Netflix. And while Austen diehards and many critics have slammed it as inauthentic, others say such modernized versions could attract new audiences to the books of the celebrated English author. VOA's Penelope Lu has more.
I almost got married once. There were no two souls more in rhythm than Wentworth and I.
In Carrie Cracknell's film Persuasion, based on the early 19th century novel by Jane Austen, Dakota Johnson plays Anne Elliot, a young woman from an aristocratic family who was once persuaded to break off her engagement to a young naval officer due to his lack of status and money. 8 years later, she's still pining for him.
It's been 7 years.
8.
Darling, at some point, you have to move on.
Many traditionalist Austen fans describe the latest flick as a parody, appealing to millennials who, they argue, have never read her classics. Gillian Davis of the Pemberley podcast thinks Austen would appreciate the different renditions of her works.
In many ways, Jane Austen was the first modern romance novelist because, the book and sort of fiction landscape when she was alive at the time was really mostly skewed towards men, and there weren't a ton of books written from a female point of view. It was really radical to just show women pursuing a happily ever after and getting it. That just didn't exist back then.
It all speaks to Jane Austen's timelessness. Penelope Pulu, VOA News, Washington.
A multimedia exhibition of African American culture in the western U.S. state of Colorado includes works by an artist who found new direction during the coronavirus pandemic. VOA's Scott Stearns has the story from Denver.
In an exhibition of fashion and portraiture celebrating African American culture, collage artist Yazz Atmore says there's no filter between what she's feeling and what she's showing.
All of my art is whatever emotion I'm going through at that time. So if I have a freedom piece, I have a freedom piece where there's tons of butterflies coming out of the chest, and it just kind of represented this freedom that I can experience and this transformation that came with that.
Atmore's work was on display in a Denver arts and venues show curated by Shanna Shelby.
I'd love to celebrate her. She brings collage and portraiture together in such a beautiful way, and layering. And also what I love about her is she has a whole line that celebrates Black women that are important to her, whether personal or professional. And it's so beautiful. Her style is so beautiful.
The former middle school art teacher says the coronavirus lockdowns pushed her to focus more on what she wants to do and what she wants to say.
The pandemic really birthed that for me, where it forced me to slow down, like all of us. It forced us to slow down, really think about who are we, or who do we want to be? We can be whatever we want.
In Love Stain, Atmore says she's celebrating love and self-love.
I'm a spot in my life and my journey where I just am loving on me and loving and having the people in my life love on me and doing what I love, making money doing what I love in the community I love.
It's that enthusiasm and her work with bold colors, metallic paints, and gold leaf that Shelby says drew her to Atmore.
Yasmin brings a joy, whether it comes from color or technique or style. She really lifts that culture back up in a very lighthearted way. And I'm just so happy to have her part of the show.
With local fashion and contributions from a Nigerian pencil artist, the exhibition included Atmore's work Eden, about each of us finding within us a divine purpose.
The inspiration was around the Garden of Eden, right? And kind of just stop trying to be what people want you to be.
Atmore says that she continues to be inspired by her work as a community organizer, and that she knew she was on the right track when everything in her first show sold out. Scott Stearns, VOA News, Denver.
And we'll close the show with some sports news, from football to singing to stand-up comedy. Former NFL player Joe Barksdale is a man of multiple talents. After his career in the NFL, Joe embarked on a career in music and podcasting. He's now part of the singing group, the Players Choir, which received accolades from both the judges and fans on the popular television show America's Got Talent. Joe spoke to Red Carpet about his new career in music and how he's using his voice and platform as an autism advocate. Joe Barksdale was first drafted by the Oakland Raiders in 2011 as a young 22-year-old right out of college. 8 years later, after playing with multiple teams, including the Chargers and the Cardinals, he hung up his football shoes for the microphone. He says that even though he enjoyed his time as a football player, his dream since childhood was to be a musician. Where does football place in the hierarchy of all these talents? Was it your first love?
It's the lowest. My first love was music. I've performed long before I did football. I actually started playing football when I was like 15 or 16. I got kicked out of engineering camp and needed something to do over the summer to get in shape. But I wanted to grow up and be an engineer and design car interiors for like General Motors. But yeah, I never loved football. I was just in love with competing. And that's one of the reasons I left, because I was always on losing teams. And after a while, you realize your mental health is more important.
Born and raised in Detroit, Joe was influenced by Motown. He played saxophone in middle school orchestra and had intentions to join the band in high school, but life had other plans. Now, at 33 years and retired from the NFL, Joe is working on his music full-time. His newly released album, Yours Truly, is a blend of all the musical genres that he enjoyed as a kid, and the world of music is noticing his talent. His single, My Angel, recently won the Best of North America Blues category for the Intercontinental Music Awards.
Internal dialogues, the things that you say to yourself, back and forth, the things that you may not talk about, but that you discuss with yourself internally. And each song, conveys those thoughts, those emotions, that philosophy. So I would say the biggest thing the album is, it's my open letter to the world. That's why it's called Yours Truly, Joe Barksdale. And it's, it's a fantastic, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very good indicator. It's a very good indicator of where I'm going, sonically, lyrically, and everything else.
Joe was diagnosed with autism at the age of 30, an event that he says put things into perspective and answered many of his questions growing up.
It answered a lot of questions, like my inability to explain my emotions, understand other people's emotions, the things that I didn't understand in social situations, why people scare me. But it answered a lot of questions for me, as well as, things like, oh, this is why I was able to pick up the guitar so fast, and this is why, that kind of thing. So I think more than anything, it just made me more comfortable with me being who I am.
Joe is now part of a singing group, the Players Choir, comprising of former NFL players, and they recently made an appearance on the popular television show America's Got Talent, becoming a fan favorite and receiving praise from singer Justin Timberlake. Thank you so much for watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. For more entertainment news, check us out at voaafrica.com. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, goodbye everyone.